What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Nash here. Welcome back to the channel. And today's episode of Yu-Gi-Oh's biggest issue, Ancient Guardians. I mean, what's more to say about it? Except the fact that this is the worst set Konami's ever released for a lot of reasons. Because you have 3 new archetypes. You have the Ogdoadic archetype, which basically is Abyss. You have the Solfachord archetype and the Ursarctic archetype, which I'm surprised Konami kept. But you also have a bunch of reprints here. So if you guys did not watch the full set list reveal that I did on Tuesday, I definitely recommend watching it, because the set list, I mean, it seems interesting, but there are so many problems with this, and I'm going to I guess sort of refresh your guys' memory, just in case if you guys didn't watch it. But going in numerical order, we have Nunu the Ogdoadic Remnant. We have Nayua the Ogdoadic Remnant. We have Flogos the Ogdoadic Boundless. Zoa the Ogdoadic Boundless. Curse the Ogdoadic Light. Alert the Ogdoadic Dark. Aaron the Ogdoadic King. Amnuisia the Ogdoadic Queen. Ogdobus the Ogdoadic Overlord. Ogdoadic Water Lily. Ogdoadic Origin, Ogdoadic Hollow, Ogdoadic Calling, Do Solfachord, Cutia, Re Solfachord Dreamia, Me Solfachord Elitia, Fa Solfachord Fancia, Sol Solfachord Gracia, La Solfachord Angelia, T Solfachord Beautia, Do Solfachord Coolia, Solfachord Elegance, Solfachord Scale, Solfachord Harmonia, Solfachord Musica, Solfachord Formal, Ursartik Mike Polar, Ursartik Mike Tanis, Ursartik Mike Billis, Ursartik Megapolar, Ursartik Megatanis, Ursartik Megabillis, Ursartik Polari, which I believe is the 1-star Synchro, Ursartik Septentrion, Ursartic Grand Chariot, Ursartic Departure, Ursartic Slider, Ursartic Big Dipper, Ursartic Quint Charge. And then those are the new cards. For the reprints, we have Phenomenon, the King of Poisonous Snakes, Vanamanaga, the Deity of Poisonous Snakes, Evil Dragon Ananta, Skullmeister, Light Serpent, Luster Pendulum, the Draco Slayer, Dinowrestler Pankratops, Dinowrestler Power, the Mighty Draco Slayer, Ignister Prominence, the Blasting Draco Slayer, King of the Feral Imps, Magister Paladin, the Ascending Draco Slayer, Snake Rain, which I believe is the new card for the whole archetype, the whole set. Trade-in, Viper's Rebirth, Air's Rock Sunrise, Pot of Riches, Wavering Eyes, Ignite Reload, Damage Equals Reptile, Rise of the Snake Deity, and Offering to the Snake Deity. Offering, I believe, is a 2-prong attack for the archetype. But let's talk about the 3 different archetypes. So obviously the Ogdoadic archetype is based on is obviously like a much more like revamped version of the what you call it, of the monsters that were used by Thelonious Viper in the GX and in the GX anime. But it's interesting because there's actually a story behind this archetype. So I'm actually on the Yu-Gi-Oh wiki website. Big shout out. Don't want to get copyrighted, of course. But it says here the monsters in this archetype are based on the Ogdoad, a group of 8 primordial beings worshipped in the ancient Egyptian city of Hermopolis. So it's kind of interesting because the big weakness that they have is actually Mask of Restrict or Necro Valley. So obviously decks like like Gravekeepers or decks that can use Mask of Restrict or Necro Valley will be so perfect against a deck like against an archetype like the Ogdoadic archetype. But it's kind of interesting because it's funny. It's actually kind of funny because even though this is a new archetype, one thing that we can expect from this is that especially if you're building the deck, one of the main cards that you can run in this deck is obviously Alien Shock Trooper M Frame, which honestly it's not like too crazy, but it does have a pretty interesting effect, which obviously it requires 2 reptile monsters. So obviously Ogdoads are reptiles. As a quick effect, you can discard 1 monster, place 8 counters, which are the counter names, equal to its original level on face-up monsters on the field. So the monster that you discarded, the 8 counters, the number of 8 counters that the monster you discarded has, that's how many counters face-up monsters on your field have. So if you discarded one of the 8-star snake monsters, then 8 counters will get placed on all of your face-up monsters on the field. Distribute it as you wish. Okay, so basically it depends on how you want to go about it. So if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the grave, you can special summon a non-link reptile monster with different names. You can special summon non-link reptile monsters with different names from your grave, up to the number of monsters your opponent controls with 8 counters. You can only use each effect once per turn. So okay, so you can place them on your opponent's monster. So if your opponent has 8 counters, then you can automatically summon you could summon like possibly a level 8. But again the big weakness for this deck, for this archetype, is obviously just the fact that you need to have Mask of Restrict or Necro Valley, which the deck is tribute heavy, so you would need to have Necro Valley to not only negate effects in the graveyard, which obviously would also stop hand traps as well, like Ash Blossom and Ghost Ogre. But with Mask of Restrict, it prevents your opponent who runs this deck tribute monsters. So yeah, so this deck, I mean, don't get me wrong, it does have some hype. I really don't see this deck going anywhere as far as meta wise. And let's also not forget that Snake Rain is a very powerful card. It is so broken, and I'll showcase you guys why, because this set is very absurd because I believe I did. Did I talk about that in one of my older videos? I think I did. If I can find, here it is, Snake Rain. So Snake Rain, I don't think we ever got this in the TCG. Did we get this? Okay, seriously, can you like? Thank you. Oh, we did get. Oh, yeah, we did. That's right. That's right. I remember. It's actually the first reprint of its kind. Actually, yeah. So this is actually the first time the cards are being reprinted. So maybe we'll finally get Air Neos reprinted, but who the hell knows? But it says discard one card, select 4 reptile monsters from your deck, and send them to the graveyard. It's basically a Fool's Burial times 5. Literally, it's a Fool's Burial times 5 because you're discarding a card for cost. That's 1 Fool's Burial. You're sending 4 reptiles from your deck to the grave. That's 4 more. You have 5. It's Fool's Burial for 5. You know for a fact this card is going to get banned, and if this card gets banned, the deck is done. The entire archetype is just done. DONE fucked. So there was really, in my opinion, there was really no point in reprinting this card because of because we know that people are going to abuse it to the point of no return. So by that point, the deck is just going to be done. The deck is not going to be like too. It's not going to be. It won't be long until Konami does an emergency ban list where this card gets banned. You know it's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. So yeah, so there's a lot of problems that. There's a lot of problems with that archetype. Just the fact that you do need you can use Mask of Restrict Necro Valley, but you can also as well use if you don't have access to Necro Valley, another card that can also be useful are cards like Different Dimension Ground. You can also use You can use DD Crow, Call by the Grave. There are so many cards that you can use to to stop the deck in its tracks. So, but now we move on into the Soulful Chord archetype, which the appearance, it says the archetype musical theme, and each member being aided by a miniature version of herself, make it a reminiscent of Ojamajo Doremi franchise, which also features witches with musical motive and aided by small fairy versions of themselves. Do, re, mi are the first 3 syllables of the solfege musical scale. Chord refers to a set of frequencies composed of multiple musical notes. So let's actually talk about that for a second, because again, it's a spellcaster pendulum archetype, which I'm surprised that there isn't a weakness with this one. There's actually no weakness. That's kind of funny. But the only thing that I will say about this archetype is the fact that is actually what each monster represents. So we have Grand Solfachord Musia, which represents the piano. Do Solfachord Cutia, which represents the harmonica. Re Solfachord Dreamia, which represents the flute. Mi Solfachord Alitia, which actually represents the bass. Fa Solfachord Francia, which represents the accordion. Sol Solfachord Gracia, which represents the saxophone. La Solfachord Angelia, which represents the trumpet. T Solfachord Beauty, which represents the harp, and of course Do Solfachord Kulia represents the violin. these instruments are instruments that normally would make up like a jazz, like a jazz band or whatever, maybe maybe like maybe a high school band or something like that. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, but I think the only thing that I could say about this archetype is that the only thing that I could say is the fact that this will probably be the worst deck anybody has ever built. I know that Triff Gaming will probably come up with something crazy with this deck in conjunction with his cards, but I really don't see this deck going anywhere with at all. But I will say this: it is sort of like another waifu deck, so it's kind of interesting in my opinion. But yeah, that deck. Not even gonna. There's gonna be nothing. There's nothing gonna be. There's no way. I really don't think that deck is gonna go anywhere as far as the meta. But now let's talk about the Ursartic archetype, because the Ursartic archetype is kind of interesting because this is one that kind of interests me a little bit, because so the design is actually the design of it says the name of the archetype comes from Ursa, which is Latin for bear, and then Arctic, Beartic, something like that. I would probably Beartic. That's kind of funny Pokemon name. The playing style. This archetype revolves around so many synchro monsters based on the difference between the levels of the tuner and the non-tuner. So that's kind of interesting, as opposed to the stone. That's actually kind of interesting. All the main deck monsters share the ability to summon themselves from the player's hand by tributing another monster. So just to give you guys an example, and I'm actually reading what the website says here. Again, don't want to get copyrighted, just as a quick heads up. But it says during the main phase, just as an example, it says during the main phase as a quick effect, you contribute one other level 7 or higher monster in your hand, special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn, except monsters that have a level. So basically, it'd be like synchro monsters. Each of the main deck monsters have an additional effect where whenever they are special summoned, the level 7 non-tuner monsters allow you to add an Ursartic monster from your deck to your hand. So kind of like a Rhoda. So the deck is it's kind of like a warrior based deck where a lot of the level 7 monsters have a Stratos like potential Rhoda effect where you could just like search the monsters from your deck to your hand, except themselves, of course. The level 8 tuner monsters have various effects to hinder your opponent, but require that they have another Ursartic monster on the field to activate. So in order to use the level 8 tuner effects, you have to have another monster on the field. So it's kind of interesting, but just like with the Ogdoadic archetype, because that this is reliant on tributing monsters, the big card that you gotta have to counteract this deck is obviously Mask of Restrict, but that's like the big downside to it. Another downside, which is also kind of crazy, is if you look at the cards, they're not just based on the bears from the from the Arctic. They're also based on constellations that you see in the sky at night. So when it comes to constellations, you have like what? Oh my god, you have so many different constellations. You have like you have like a lion constellation, a dragon constellation, just to name a couple of them. But that's what this archetype is based off of, and it's kind of funny because this archetype is actually kind of similar to the 5Ds era, where if you guys remember, the Darksigners had used civilians as bait, as like pawns to do something called dark synchro summoning. If you guys remember that, that was quite the interesting mechanic, where the difference in the levels of the tuner and the non-tuner would become a lower level. So if you had like say a level 8 monster, a level 8 tuner, and a level 3 non-tuner, let's say that, you would be able to summon a level 5 synchro. That's what this archetype is based off of. And again, you need to have cards like Mask of Restrict. You can even also have cards like potentially, like, I would say Dark Hole. Maybe Fiendish Chain would be another really good one to use. But again, I really don't see anything crazy. Again, just like with the other three, this is gonna be a weird one. The only thing that I can say about this deck is that it does have some potential to be, I'd say, I don't know, like maybe I'd say maybe a tier 2 deck, tier 1 at best, but that's pretty much it. But I mean, there's really nothing too crazy. There's like I wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with the new archetypes except for the Solfachord archetype, but the reprints are where it's at, because you have, again, cards like Phenomenaga, Skullmeister. The only reprints in this set that are really good, that actually desperately needed reprints, are cards like Skullmeister, Pankratops, Trade-in, Snake Rain was another one, but also Damage Eagles Reptile as well, which if you guys don't know that card, what that card does, let's see. It says here, once per turn, when you take battle damage from a battle involving a reptile monster, you can special summon a reptile from your deck with attack less than or equal to the battle damage you took. So if you took, like, say, just as an example, like, say you took 2,000 damage, let's say that, you'll be able to summon a reptile from your deck that has 2,000, that has at least 2,000 or less attack, which it's really good, especially if you want to go into some some of your Xyz plays or whatever. This card could really do good. But as far as like rarity wise, value wise, I think the only cards that in this set that are like valuable, as far as like the collector's rares go, I would say Skullmeister, Pankratops, Trade-in, and that's it. I think those are the only three. What are the collector's rares in the set? Let's take a look. So for the collector's rares, we have Aaron, the Ogdoadic King, Amnesia, the Ogdoadic Queen, Ogdoabyss, the Ogdoadic Overlord, Solfachord Francia, Solfachord Gracia, excuse me, La Solfachord Angelia, T Solfachord Beautia, Do Solfachord Coolia, Ursartik Polari, Septentrion, Grand Chariot is the other one. Phenomenaga, the deity of poisonous snakes, Skullmeister, Pankratops, Snake Rain, Trade-in, and I believe that's it. Yeah, those are the only collector's rares. Yeah, again, as far as value wise, Trade-in, Skullmeister, Snake Rain, and Pankratops are like the only ones that are really good as far as like value wise. So to recap, in my opinion, I would consider this to be the worst set ever because with the Ogdoadic archetype, or I guess the Abyss archetype, it's heavy, it's tribute heavy. So again, you need to have Necro Valley, or Mask of Restrict. But if you don't have Necro Valley, again, cards like Different Dimension Ground, Call by the Grave, or Silent Graveyard. That's another good like alternate, for Necro Valley, because even now, even though Necro Valley's been reprinted quite a few times, it's still pretty expensive. It's still pretty expensive. I think it's like what, $7-8 card, I think, depending on the rarity. But yeah, so my thoughts on Ancient Guardians. It's an okay set. The only problem is that the only deck that does have a lot of potential is definitely the Ursartic archetype, because there's really nothing crazy. There's really like no weakness within the deck, other than the fact that it's tribute heavy. So again, if you're going up against this, you need to have Mask of Restrict to literally save your ass, because once Mask of Restrict comes into play, you essentially just win. You essentially just win the game. You essentially just win the whole match against the deck, and it's done. GG. But guys, that is going to do it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below which of the three. Let me know in the comments below the question of the day. Which of the three archetypes are you guys going to be playing the most? I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about that, and why. Why are you guys going to play one of these three decks? For me, I would probably have to pick the Ursartic archetype, just because I've never in my whole career as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and as someone who loves Yu-Gi-Oh, I've never worked with water decks before. So to work with the Ursartic archetype, it would be pretty interesting. So I might build it. I don't know, but that is going to do it for this episode of Yu-Gi-Oh's Biggest Issue. Hopefully you guys enjoy. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel, you guys want more episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh's Biggest Issue, which gets posted every Friday. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any new content that comes your way. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. All the links are going to be down in the description. And if you guys have any fan mail that you want to send me and want me to open up on the channel, my address will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.